Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode. In this episode we're going to be talking about nature, how we're going to enhance nature, which means really how we're going to make it better for the animals out there and the ones that we want to encourage into our garden, the ones like birds, earthworms, and also bees. So a couple of things that I've learned over the last few years is one, with compost, don't just chuck it into a top of a compost heap because that's going to attract flies and rats and obviously and a bad smell. So what I do is put it into a bucket, and after the bucket's full I take it out, dig a hole, bury it, and let the worms get straight to it. The bacteria break it down. Within a few weeks it's all gone, and then the plants can get the nutrition from that broken down compost. Worms are great. The poo that comes out of the backsides of worms is just awesome food for plants. Now, secondly, the soil in gardens shouldn't be exposed. You shouldn't have bare soil at any time, really. You should have it covered with either mulch, bark mulch, or a ground cover. And that way, it'll protect the soil like a skin, and protecting it from getting damaged and broken down. And also, it'll stop the weeds just multiplying, because obviously weed seeds are floating around in the air all the time, and when they land on to the soil, they'll germinate. So if it's very hard, if it lands on bark, it's not going to be able to germinate very well. And if it lands on the top of a plant, it can't germinate. So one key way of keeping your garden low maintenance is to cover the soil. So soil also needs to be protected from chemicals, harsh chemicals, things like Roundup. Roundup is damaging to the soil because it kills weeds, but also the Roundup is taken down into the soil, and Roundup is an antimicrobial uh, um, um, pesticide, and therefore it will kill the good bugs in the soil. We've got good bugs in our stomach. If we killed all those good bugs, the bad bugs take over, and then we'd probably die. That's how a plant actually gets killed by Roundup. It works in two ways. One way is it flushes out all the ions, things like the positive ions like copper, zinc, which then stuffs up the photosynthesis for the plant. Then secondly, it kills the good bugs around the roots, and then the bad bugs come in and kill that plant. So we've got to be careful with pesticides. It's including the ones that we spray on plants. I generally don't use pesticides in this garden. If I'm going to use them, it'll be very limited, maybe along a boundary line or around in paving and that sort of places where plants are not growing. Pesticides, I don't spray pesticides at all. I pick plants that are a little bit more resistant, and this year we're probably going to try something like a codling moth trap for the apples and try those sort of avenues, because sometimes bugs do get on top of the plants and the fruit. Right, so we've got that's what I do for the worms. What I do for the bees is basically I put in some plants like rosemary, zinnias, but you can put in plants like lavender. It will feed the bees, keep them happy. If they're happy, then they'll go out and they will keep the fruit trees and pollinate the fruit trees, and you'll have better fruit. It's a win-win. Um, Also, I like to keep the birds happy because the birds eat the bugs, and they eat bugs and slugs and snails and earwigs and aphids, which is really great. So what I try to do for them is to give them one place to build nests, build their homes. So we've got some big trees in here in our garden. If you don't have that, you can have little bird boxes on sticks. That will work as well. And we also feed them, so our leftover sandwiches and things like that we'll throw out to the birds. Leftover fruit we cut up and let the nectar birds feed on those. Nectar birds prefer the flowering trees. So the flowering trees are things like the kowhai for New Zealand. Cherry trees are really good. Banksias over the winter. All those sort of nectar feeding trees helps those birds live throughout the whole year. Big important factor too is, if you can see in the background here, is our little water feeders, which are basically the bird bath and just a little cheap terracotta dish for the little birds, small legs. They don't want to drown in there, so that's for them, and they can drink from there, and they can also go to the big bath as well if they need bigger birds. We've even had tui, usually just one tui, that comes in there and he splashes around. It's really quite amazing. So these are some of the ways that that I've done in my garden. Hopefully you found them useful. And if you have, please give the thumbs up, subscribe. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.